Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot. It is December 4th. So, I just finished watching that first part of the hearings, and it was interesting to me that the word treason sort of kept coming up. Because what the scholars were basically saying was that in Trump's behavior, which in fact aided the Russians, that was treason. So that was really interesting to me. I sort of haven't quite wrapped my head around that, but that was interesting. The phone records yesterday were released, indicating the calls between Parnas and Nunes and Giuliani in the White House and the Office of Management Budget. Those were really, really interesting. And of course, what was even more interesting was when you came to realize that the Republicans had that information. It wasn't like it was a surprise to them. They knew, or should have known if they reviewed the information, that was in there. And so that's curious to me that they would work so hard to set up this other narrative when, just like everything else, eventually they have to correct their story or go back or explain, because they just are all apparently incapable of speaking rational, logical truth. So there's that. Okay, a couple more things. Adam Schiff last night in an interview, I think it was with Rachel Maddow, made a point of saying that their work continues and their investigations continue. And I thought it was very interesting that he called out specific people that they continue to they continue to investigate, because there's not real clarity yet on their behaviors and actions. And it was Pence, Mulvaney, and Pompeo. So interesting that, they're sort of specifically naming Pence in particular, right? I mean, they already have to have some pretty interesting stuff in their back pocket to publicly indicate that, they're not done looking at what went on there. So that was interesting. Yesterday, the appeals court did not, they ruled that Deutsche Bank and Capital One had to release without delay the Trump family financial records and those business records, so Ivanka's records and Don Jr.'s and Trump's. So that was interesting and could have explained, I guess, to some degree, the cranky little look on his face and the pouty little look on his face during his appearances, particularly photo shoots with, at NATO. So there was that. And yes, I have heard that Trump called Trudeau two-faced, and you don't apologize for your president. There's not a need to. I'd still rather stick with Trudeau than Trump. So there you go. And the final thing is, for those of you, I had the information on yesterday's video, and I did send out a community message. For those of you who continue to look for Deborah's holiday special mediumship offer, if the actual information, if you don't have a pen handy, is in the comment, in the little part below my video on yesterday's video, GOP Fantasy, but I will rattle it off now. This is a new address that she has given me to pass on to you. So if you're wanting to get a hold of her, it is debchap222 at gmail.com, and it's capital DEBCHAP 222 at gmail.com. So I think that's all of my little housekeeping messages. Oh, and Atticus does say thank you so much for all the lovely compliments. He agrees that he is adorable and gorgeous and cute. Okay, so it's really apparent that this hearing is going on, and it started, and the Judiciary Committee is ultimately going to end up drafting articles of impeachment, which is going to send this whole kit and caboodle to the Senate, where it is going to be conducted like a trial, right? That would be the equivalent in the legal system. This is the trial that will happen once it goes to the Senate. And I'm not, again, super familiar. I'm Canadian, so I'm not exactly all that familiar with how that, looks and works out, etc. But I know that Mitch McConnell has said that he is not going to speed this thing through and whatever. But once this thing actually gets started, it is Chief Justice John Roberts who is the judge who conducts or, handles the opposing parties, just like a judge, which I'm assuming in a regular, courtroom trial, right? He is the one who kind of controls both the prosecution and the defense. And in this case, Chief Justice Roberts is going to be the one who, is kind of moderating, I guess, the Democrats versus the Republicans. So I thought it would be just really interesting to take a bit of a look at what the Senate, trials are going to look like. Oopsie, the double's falling out. And what we can expect from Chief Justice Roberts. So let's take a look at that. That is my question. Oh. Come on down. I have a question. Okay, and today's question is, we want to focus in on the Senate trial, and in particular, Chief Justice John Roberts. So, Senate trial Roberts. Senate trial Roberts. Senate trial Roberts. For those of you who have been asking today, I have 2 pieces of smoky quartz here. I always have smoky quartz crystals, and very often you will see me with a clear quartz crystal. Also, the smoky quartz is particularly helpful for keeping away lower or negative energies. And when you're delving into the United States politics, you kind of really need to guard against those sort of lower energies. Okay. Okay. 2 of Cups and Ace of Wands stayed at the bottom, so we'll see if those apply as we go through the reading. Okay, so just to start with, what we have here is it's sort of like 2 sides, if you will, of the trial. Okay, so you have one side that is trying to keep things balanced and professional and incredibly fair. And what they're trying to do is they are trying to present a case that will allow some people to literally see things from a different or a higher or a better perspective. They are going to attempt to lay it out as cleanly and as simply as they can, so that the information that needs to get out to the American public is available, and if they tune in, they will hear exactly what happened and what that means and how that is frankly dangerous to the United States as a democracy. You have the other side who is going to be a wee little bit, okay, a lot, defensive. They're going to continue to sort of, muddy the waters, give alternative facts, just sort of, they're not going to really deal with the facts as they are, because they're going to continue to argue about anything but, because of course the facts are not in their favor or on their side. And so the Two of Cups here and the Ace of Wands, which stayed, at the bottom when I went to lift the deck, this is what this is telling me. It's telling me about the two sides and how Chief Justice Roberts is going to be sort of the mediator, if you will, between opposing sides, between two different versions of basically the same story. He is going to be the one that sits sort of between and tries to keep things level and balanced. I don't know anything about this guy. I know that he's a more conservative leaning judge, but beyond that, I really don't know anything about him or his personality. But what this is indicating is that he is going to have good communication. He is going to be able to control what needs to be controlled and let what needs to be amplified or fleshed out, that happens there. So what I'm getting here is a very clear communication style, and I'm also getting a very firm communication style. So he's going to be as fair and just as he can, but he is not going to put up with any shenanigans. He's not going to put up with any nonsense, because once this thing goes into that Senate hearing phase, it is a trial. And as Chief Justice, it is frankly the most important trial or that he will ever preside over. This is an impeachment, for goodness sakes. So he is not going to be made into a pawn in any way, shape, or form. He has the skill set and the talents and the knowledge to keep this thing running in a way that is balanced and fair. We also have the star showing up here. So that is indicating that you can put your hopes and your trust in his non-biased opinions and rulings, I guess, if he's making rulings. I don't quite know, ultimately it is the vote that rules or passes judgment, much like a jury would. But you can count on him, energetically, it certainly looks like, to maintain fair, balanced proceedings that are where appropriate courtroom decorum is adhered to and followed, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There is that sense that some of the antics, if you will, that have been going on so far in the hearing phases are not really going to be well tolerated, once this thing moves to the Senate. Now, okay, you are dealing with a different group of people, because everything so far has been, Congress and that kind of, but once it goes to the Senate, you're now dealing with a whole new group of people who are senators. Of course, in that group, you have Mitch McConnell and you have Lindsey Graham. So, what that's going to look like, well, I guess we're going to, find out. There are going to be attempts to muddy the waters and tell a different version of the story. And that's frankly as it should be. If you were looking at this as a normal trial, you would not say The prosecution, if they can't agree with everything the defense says, or the defense can't agree with everything the prosecution says, they're not allowed to say anything different. Okay, that's not how your legal system works. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's almost not how any legal system in a mature democracy would work. So, you have to expect that the Republicans are going to put on the strongest defense, if you will, that they are capable of. And you have to expect that the Democrats are going to put on the most strongest prosecution of their facts. So it is Robert's job to keep that balance, and it appears as if he is going to, despite the fact that there are going to be attempts made, okay? There's going to actually be a fair amount of information and insight that comes out. I get the sense that energetically, once this thing goes to the Senate, there's going to be sort of a sense of more gravity to the situation. There is going to be a feeling of, where up until now there has been kind of a lot of, kangaroo court kind of stuff going on, right? A lot of ridiculous behaviors and interruptions and procedural nonsense, and people asking questions who don't ask a question, they just ramble. It appears as if the Senate side of it is going to be a little bit more structured and a little bit more focused, if you will. Particularly from the Republicans, there is a sense that they are going to behave with more decorum and more respect for the process, but do not fool yourself into thinking that that means that they're going to give up all of their tricks, because they're not. There could very well be information that comes out with regards to the White House, the GOP, that causes a tower moment and a change of fortune for the White House. Now, I did talk about in one of my previous readings, I think I was talking about, I was using a pendulum, I think. But I was talking about the fact that it looks as if something is sort of coming down the pike, if you will, that is going to be exposed during the time of the actual Senate hearings, that could sort of throw a whole, wrench in the thing. It feels as if there's going to be something coming down that is going to be sort of explosive in its own right, that is sort of separate from what is going on in that Senate hearing. So, and it's showing up here again, so that is kind of interesting to me, because it shows that there are going to be people who you would not expect, or who are going to have to turn away in disappointment with some of the revelations that come out. Yep, there's secrets coming to bear, and they're going to bear fruit, and there's going to be sadness and disappointment as a result. So it certainly indicates that the GOP may have sort of a difficult time of it. And the reason that this is reading, GOP, trouble for the GOP, is because these hearings are basically taking part or place in their house and under their jurisdiction, if you will. Yeah, there's going to be exposure. Things are going to come to light. And in some ways, things are finally going to be presented in a really easy to follow, kind of almost story-like fashion. I have heard that the report that came out from the Intelligence Committee, the thing that was passed on to the Judiciary Committee, is very easy reading. Apparently, it's like 300 pages long, but there are places and pieces in it where they do sort of condensed overviews. And so, from what I'm understanding, though, the whole thing is laid out in a very, very simple to read, simple to understand, kind of very methodical, point by point fashion. So it might well be worth, getting a hold of that. I'm sure it's available online. And, if not reading the whole thing, at least reading some of the initial summaries. So exposure and communications that cause some people to walk away, to literally throw down their swords and walk away. And ultimately, it's going to have something to do with Donald Trump and his money, his possessions, his assets, whether that is maybe some really underhanded or lower vibrational ways in which money was made. I think it's beyond taxes, but it may be that the banking records, etc., that might hopefully end up getting released, because I'm sure it's going to get appealed to the Supreme Court. But it feels like it's more than just that. It feels like there's a lot of money facts coming out that are really, really not going to put him in a very good light. Yeah, this has to do with business arrangements. It has to do with how they accumulated assets. And interestingly enough, we again have that strong female energy that looks as if it is going to be, sorry about that, if you just heard that bang. It's my door closing. Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought. But I ramble too much anyways. I'm sure you can probably all fill in the blanks. Okay, so this is a little bit shorter by a few minutes than I typically have been, my videos have typically been lately. But I have to get back to the I have to get back to the hearings and see what part 2 looks like. All right, so take care. Everybody be well. I hope that you have a chance to, if not watch the hearings today, at least follow up on some of the news reports, etc., on them, so that you continue to stay informed. Please take care, be well, and I'll see you really soon. Bye.